Welcome back to Defending the Game podcasts. We've only done one before this, which was the Halloween one.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about doing podcasts in the past. And actually, this specific podcast has come up several times. Every time this is relevant again, every time something bad or violent happens, this topic comes up. And we've been planning to do it for ages, and now we're finally actually doing it.
Yeah, I think for the first time we are legitimately living up to our name, defending something that is actually video game related.
Well, there you go. This is, you can explain where the name came from.
Yeah, I suppose that's exactly it. We've said it on live streams and stuff before, haven't we? That the whole idea behind Defending the Game wasn't initially to be the entertaining, we hope, Let's Play channel that, you guys sit, watch, interact with. It was more sort of focused around looking at the way that media does portray video games or other sources of violent media as a means to give people like an incentive to undertake different behaviours, crimes or atrocities influenced by it.
Yeah. It's like passing the blame, isn't
exactly.
it? Pretty much, yeah. So today we've got Mark.
Hello.
Gina, me, and Tash.
Yay!
So we're going to talk about that, what you just said.
What you just said.
Mark's quite experienced in all this sort of stuff though, because he did do his dissertation on literally defending the game.
The
idea.
I'll scroll back. So the actual title of my dissertation, which was clearly good enough in some way to actually award me my degree, or one of the degrees, was adult-orientated video games and young people. Are they really that bad for us? Which, now I read it back, is, are young people bad for us? Yes. That's an entirely different debate.
Yes, they are.
And it was exactly that, like we've said, looking at how the media, how it's so easy for it to blame video games for behaviours or crimes, usually quite sickening or shocking crimes as well, when there's only like a very tertiary link to video games itself. Either the behaviour is something that has been emulated, not necessarily from a video game, but in a video game, because in all of human history, I'm fairly certain we've completed every atrocity that there is.
Well, there's been lots of different instances that this has come up, hasn't it?
Well, I actually found some interesting information. So there was a sort of thing done by the Secret Service in about 2002. There was a study of 41 school shootings, and they basically found out what percentage was interested in what. And only 12% of the 41 were known to be playing violent video games. Yeah. There was a 24% of reading violent books and a 27% of watching violent films. So the actual lowest common denominator in that was the video games, but the video game seems to be the one that gets the blame the most.
I think
which is bizarre.
Part of that is probably almost a generational thing. So it's so easy for people to demonise things they don't understand.
Yeah.
You look at the typical newsreader, or you imagine like the typical reader of The Sun as a tabloid newspaper, or the Daily Mail as a broadsheet. You're never picturing a young person.
Yeah, I have a list of names of people that comment on how bad video games are, that have no history of playing video games. They have no understanding of the culture. Yeah. We've got Bill O'Reilly, who called on an interview, he called GTA Grand Auto Theft.
As you do. I love playing some GAT.
Not only is it GAT, not only is it like a really well-known video game, it's an actual crime.
Yeah.
It's an actual crime.
Genuine,
And he called it Grand Auto Theft. We have Charles Williams, who's a child psychologist, and he spoke out repeatedly about violent video games and how it affects children. Not a gamer, has never played. Most of them say in their interviews, they're like, I've never played this game. It's like, well, how do you have an opinion? Trump constantly goes on about how it's increasing. Hillary Clinton,
politicians,
in the late 90s, went on record saying that video games were bad for kids. Jack Thompson was an American lawyer that repeatedly tried to sue video game companies and eventually gets disbarred. Now, he didn't get disbarred because of his lawsuits against like video game companies, but he's so uncredible.
Just see the next name you've got.
And Keith Vaz. Which was actually part of Mark's dissertation. Names and shames him in it.
His name and shaming after a personal run-in with him as well. So when the Reservoir Dogs video game came out, and this is years ago, I think we're talking 2007, 2008 now.
Something like that,
he's based his sort of understanding of it on the film, which clearly is an 18 rated film, not suitable for viewing by anyone under that age, and you'd expect the legal system in place to stop anyone younger than that viewing such material. But his view was basically, it should be banned. Same with Grand Theft Auto, and he specifically, I think he pointed out at one point with Grand Theft Auto, the content, it's disgusting, it's disturbing, it's young people that are looking at it. I remember writing a letter to one of our local papers in response to the article in which he was talking about Grand Theft Auto, and saying, actually, when I've looked at the trailer of Grand Theft Auto that you are referring to, in saying that it should be banned, the footage on there is no dissimilar to what's being shown on BBC News at 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah. And kids are still up then.
And yet it's fine for kids to watch the news.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate, though, I do understand why people separate like video games to like films and stuff like that, because if you're watching a film, you're just watching it. If you're playing a game, you are participating in a way, you are playing the person that's doing these things, you are in control of what they're doing. So I get where they're coming from with it. I get that there's a difference between just watching a violent film and actually being in control of a character that does the violent things.
I think you touched on that in your dissertation as well, though, didn't you? The difference between, yes, you're playing as a character, you're playing as somebody that shoots someone, but you're not learning how to shoot a gun. They're two very different things.
And I suppose a lot of it, especially with open world games like Grand Theft Auto, any open world game which is 18 rated or could have violence, even Red Dead Redemption, it's a choice to commit those acts.
Yeah.
I've not gone out and tied up somebody and left them on the train tracks. It's an option
not recently,
to do it.
Anyway.
Well, we can't discuss that. But I mean, there was a lot of flack towards Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
With the airport mission.
Oh,
no
yeah.
Russian.
That got a lot.
And the idea there is obviously that the player is participating in a terrorist attack at a Moscow airport. You don't have to shoot anyone to pass that level. And if you do or do not, the outcome is still the same.
But again, that's an argument saying that these video games put you in a mindset that you can do it, so maybe you should do it.
Well, it's the whole, a violent person, if they have violent tendencies, they're going to have violent tendencies.
Yeah.
And
regardless.
Violent video games are not going to create these violent tendencies. They'll possibly work as an outlet, a healthy outlet.
Yeah, stress relief.
Potentially, that sort of thing. And then when the video games are not enough to like suppress these feelings, then yes, some people might go on and do
that. You can go into that about any other sort of medium.
Yeah,
like one of the biggest ones that goes from fantasy to reality is porn.
Yeah.
Yes,
like you can watch certain types of porn and then it's not enough. If that can happen with porn, why? Well, maybe it happens with video games too. And I was like, that's less about the game and more about the individual.
This was an argument that, so there was a game that was supposed to be put on Steam, and Steam were like and ahhing about whether they should, because Steam have released this thing where it's like there's no rules. If you upload a game to ours, like there's no rules of what you can and can't upload to our
it's community
thing.
moderated, and so
Yes,
if it's downvoted, it disappears.
Yes, but they said there's no rules now, so anything goes. Someone made a game called Rape Day.
Yes, yeah.
Where you play a rapist and the point is to go around and sexually assault women. I was looking at because I quite like going into the comment sections of these sort of things to read other people's opinion, because I feel like reading an article about something as one person's opinion.
Yeah.
And I know the comment section of articles, they can be toxic, but you can see some other people's opinions as well. And someone did say, they said something like, don't misunderstand me, I think this is a disgusting game, and I mean eventually Steam decided not to put it up. This person was saying, don't get me wrong, it's disgusting, I'm glad they've not put it up, but really, if this is the attitude you have towards a game about rape and how it's unhealthy to glorify that and how it's disgusting to have that in a video game and have someone playing that, what's the difference with being someone who goes around shooting people? And I couldn't think of anything to I could think of little things, but nothing substantial to be like, well, no, there is a clear difference. Like, really, there's not. If you really sit and think about it, there probably is morally to you yourself. But if you think about it logically...
Yeah, it is that weird... It's that line, isn't it? Because I can go, what sort of person would want to play a game about raping somebody? And then someone could go, well, what sort of person would want to play a game about shooting someone?
About killing someone, yeah.
So it's that... I get it. But again, I think it comes down to personal preference, isn't it?
Definitely.
If that's not something you want to be...
No,
but
not at all.
The type of people that are going to be playing that because they find it funny or because they actually want to do something like that is going to be very, very, very small.
The person who made the game, it was him that made it worse than anything else, because one of his comments on it was like, I wanted to make a game for people like me, or people who enjoy things that I enjoy as well, and stuff like that. He made it so much worse than it already was.
What also made it worse though is if it was quietly uploaded onto Steam, people who were into that kind of type of thing would find it, and it's not like walking into a shop and picking up a physical copy and having to provide ID to buy it. Steam again is a service which is unknown to certain
very easily
older
lie
people.
about your age.
Quite easily, yeah.
Another thing with that is, like I said earlier about playing violent video games. If you have violent tendencies, it could be a healthy outlet to, you know, curb those urges, I suppose, in a healthy way.
Well,
and then people were arguing, well, what if this game is that for someone who wants to go out and rape somebody? What if they played this game and it sort of curbed that? But at the same time,
without running,
you know,
with running the risk of going off on a bit of a tangent,
yeah,
we were having a similar discussion about sex offenders and potential sex offenders.
Yeah.
So there's a story of a guy that's like, I'm a teacher, I work at a primary school, and I found myself being attracted to the children that I work with.
Yeah.
And I've never acted on it, but I am going to go and speak to my GP. He went to the police. He was like, I'm a paedophile. And they were like, we haven't done anything. And he was like, but I want to. Help me.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't want to be like this. And where do you go when you have tendencies like that? What do you do? Because obviously when it comes to a child pornography is not an option, obviously, and thankfully it's not.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Because you can't change someone's desires.
No. And there was a very, very similar story where customs at the border had stopped a package of sex dolls because they were child-sized.
Yeah.
And the argument put forward by the recipient, or the intended recipient, was, I've got urges I want to fulfil, but I don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, it's very.
But it's
so torn right down the middle.
It's
with
that serial killer
opinions
mentality though, because it's
what happens
with small animals, and then they get bigger
Yeah.
animals, and then I will only do it once, and it's the same with stuff like this, which is why I get the correlation that mainstream media and like concerned parents and stuff like that make between video games and violence. But actually, from some of the research that I've looked at, and I've looked quite extensively over the past couple of days, as I'm sure Mark has in his life, there's nothing to actually prove that it makes people violent. There was one study that was done in 2007 that did say it can make you violent, like it gives people violent tendencies for 3 to 5 minutes. It was very short-lived.
It's like the whole if you lose, you shut the controller.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You get violent.
If you play the violent video games, what they did is they did a study where they read a very nondescript story, and it was very neutral. The character's reaction in the stories were really neutral, and the people that had been playing the violent video games attributed negative characteristics to that very neutral person. The people that didn't contribute negative, they were quite positive, or they were very neutral, they read it how it was. But they found that when they read it later, like a week after playing, it was neutral again. And then they sort of narrowed it down to a 3 to 5 minute period of time where it makes you violent. The same study said that actually it increases your ability to handle stressful situations, it increases your concentration, your ability to cope under pressure and stress. So realistically, what I got from reading that article was that the pros sort of outweighed the cons. There was a little bit
long-term pros, short-term cons.
Yeah, that's what I read from that.
But it's still escapism, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's escapism.
That's sort of the point.
Yeah, you've got your stress relief. I think it's probably length of sort of playtime that is going to affect like stress levels.
Yeah.
If you're stuck at a particularly difficult level in a difficult game for a prolonged period of time, you're going to get angrier. But then I think the sense of relation of then passing that block, that's your stress relief.
I don't necessarily think it's about passing the block as well. I think that's a really important lesson to teach younger minds.
Yeah.
That you can persevere. And the passing and the relief of passing is fine, but actually teaching them that they can persevere and they can't let their emotions get out of control.
It's also teaching
It's a very good method
It's also
of
teaching them
it.
to take a step back as well, because people say, well, like it happens with me as well. If I'm playing a game,
Yeah.
it's really difficult. I'll put it down for a couple of hours, and I'll come back later and I'll do it first time.
You're sort of teaching yourself to regulate.
Take a step back,
Yeah.
calm yourself down. When you're calmer, you'll probably be able to do it.
Yeah, and we're talking in general terms about video games at this point, not necessarily violent ones.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about violent video games, you've got to talk about the age ratings.
Yeah.
And how easy it is for the things that, like, we have age ratings for a reason.
Yeah.
And
In
it's
fact, we have
parent-
2 systems in the UK.
Yeah.
Which we adhere to. We've got obviously
Peggy.
the standard one and Peggy.
Yeah. Peggy 18.
Exactly. And again, that's probably in part where, sort of, as we were growing up, it was difficult for us to access sort of older age-rated games because they were all digital copies.
Yeah.
It's now so easy and so prevalent to be able to access a digital copy either through a legitimate channel or through a torrent or something else.
Yeah.
And there's very little in the way of checks and balances, probably by parents, by those that actually understand.
Well, that was a lot of the
access
things
to
that
it.
I sort of noticed when I was reading it. Was why is your 10-year-old playing a game for an 18-year-old? Oh well, I didn't know. Well, it's not
there
really.
on the
It's not the
case.
gamer's. It's not the company's responsibility to stop that game from being bootlegged. They're trying because they're losing money every time it's bootlegged.
Yeah, it's
they
in their
don't want that
best
to
interest.
happen. You have to supervise what your child's doing. It's your responsibility to stop your underage child. You couldn't turn around to a police officer officer and be like, oh, sorry, my kid was drunk on the street, that child would still be your responsibility. It wouldn't be, it might potentially be the responsibility of the person that sold them the alcohol, but what if the alcohol was alcohol that they stole from your house? It would still be your responsibility. And this whole idea that, oh, he played violent video games and then he was violent, so it must have been, why was he playing them in the first place?
Well, the most recent instance of that was the New Zealand Christchurch shooting, wasn't it? Because I don't think that's blown up on video games quite as much as some in the past have.
Yeah.
Like I know the Sandy Hook one blew up quite a lot, and like,
Sandy Hook definitely did. Columbine
definitely did.
But I think that the Christchurch one did a little bit, just because I think I read that his family, which they didn't condone anything he did at all, but I think in one of their interviews they did say that they remembered him being a fan of violent video games and not very good with women, I think or struggled with women.
Well, that's a whole different
which awkward teenagers and stuff don't. It's,
yeah.
I mean, this guy wasn't a teenager, but
again, it's swings and roundabouts, because Mick is the softest person I've ever met in my life, and he plays shooting games. Yeah. And he would never do anything like that.
I think
you're going to seek it out if you want to seek it out for whatever reason you seek it out for.
It's completely personal. I feel like if you have a violent tendency, you have it, and no amount of violent video games is going to bring it out in you. There's potential that it might make it worse if you're, I don't know, weak-minded, I suppose, is, if you're easily...
It's if you already have the tendency.
If it's already there, it's there. Yeah, well, yeah, because...
Well, the argument is that it does normalise it. That seeing violence all the time makes violence a normal thing to see.
Yeah.
But I would argue that there's certain countries that I wrote the name down of and forgot. I can't find it on my notes. But there's certain countries that have completely banned violent video games, and they're some of the most violent countries in the world.
Ironically, Australia and New Zealand are one of the countries that made concessions in the games that they've got. If you are shooting at a humanoid-shaped character in a video game, and you happen to be playing it in Australia or New Zealand, there's an edit to it where it's made clear that what you're shooting at is not human, i.e. when you shoot it, it explodes like a robot. I think Streets of Rage did that at one point.
Yeah.
Or possibly one of the Turtles games, very similar 2D side-scrolling. Yeah. Or if it's clear that they are meant to be a living thing, the blood is green.
So, it's supposed to stimulate fantasy rather than reality.
Yes,
yeah.
But I think with the desensitising thing that we were talking about as well, and adding on to the Christchurch thing, that was sort of proven, I suppose, with how people are desensitised to violence, especially in real life and stuff, because the video of the stream that because he obviously live streamed what he did, and people were sharing it. 10 years ago, it would not have been shared as much as it was today.
Because people would have been disgusted by it.
Absolutely,
they would not have shared it.
And most people were, but there were, a percentage of people that were still sharing it.
Leaping to the defence of his actions, saying it's the first step in taking our country back. And obviously you can't see me, but that was in inverted commas.
Yeah, I mean, that's going into the area of politics and stuff like that.
Again, it's the irony of not realising that most of them were
blaming it on
Yeah.
gaming and the games that you played and stuff, but actually the politics sounds like it was more of an influence.
Definitely,
than the actual game.
He wrote an entire manifesto, didn't he, before he did it?
Exactly.
Apparently that was full of memes and
internet culture, which I suppose
but internet culture isn't just internet culture anymore. I think that's the problem, that the generation that isn't involved in internet culture thinks that it's just the occasional
just on the
demented mind goes on the computers and they say crazy things, and it's actually, well, the internet is part of our generation.
It's everyday life now.
It's part of Maslow's hierarchy of need: food, oxygen, shelter, warmth. Internet is now the bottom level of that.
Yeah, it
because
is.
of how integrated it is into everyday life.
Well, I mean, look at schools now.
Yeah.
Secondary schools, they're getting homework to do stuff online.
Yeah, well, we never got that one.
No, not at all. No. It wasn't even necessary to have a computer at home to do our homework.
No. I mean, it's straight like our generation.
You were rich if you had a computer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had to have a room for it.
Yeah, you had a computer room.
I mean, our generation, it's a bit of a weird one. So, our parents' generation, we
are the strangest generation ever. We've
do.
lived in two different
we have.
generations.
So, they didn't have any of that technology growing up. Whereas for our generation, there's a very clear point. You can remember first using a computer in school.
We grew up without it.
Yeah.
Then
it's been there the entire time.
Other half of our life.
I read an article that was saying that we were like the generation of nostalgia.
We are.
Because we're the only generation that has lived through both of having and not having.
And it's there's a few different child development books which focused on technology and whatever. So I came across whilst doing research for the dissertation, and there was two terms. There was digital natives, which they said was anybody born sort of anybody who was a child from sort of 1994 onwards is where technology started to become mainstream in their education and their lives. And there were what they call digital immigrants, which is basically the parents' generation having to adapt to this technology.
Yeah.
But you see it now as well. I mean, even at our age, like late 20s, 30 years old, if you walked out onto the street and, if you're brave enough to approach a 15-year-old, you're not. But how much would you have in common with them in terms of technology?
Absolutely.
Because it's been there their entire lives.
Yeah.
And they know
when I
far
think of
more
a
about it
young
than we
teenager,
do.
I think of your little sister, and sometimes she says shit, and I'm like,
oh, and
what
lingo
are
and
you
stuff
on
like
about?
that. But I mean, I think the main social media at the moment is Snapchat.
yeah, for younger
Stuff like
kids,
that.
it's Snapchat.
And we're like, I literally use Snapchat to do
I
funny
don't use
faces
Snapchat.
for Lily, and that's it. And they don't get posted anywhere. She just likes doing the funny faces.
No.
I
don't
use it
even
to
have that
send
'cause it's
10
on
seconds
Facebook.
of a song on a radio.
Yes,
Look what's
yeah.
on. It's usually Africa. And
I don't use Snapchat at all. I used to, and then I was like, I have Instagram. I can post
Yeah.
stories on Instagram.
Yeah.
Why would my main source of media is Instagram. I don't even really use Twitter anymore. I read a lot of stuff on Twitter, but I don't tweet a lot.
Yeah.
But those that do, try and categorise or condense news of things that happen, like the Christchurch shooting, into 240 characters. People are taking that news in bite-sized chunks, and it misses out a lot of the backstory to why something has happened.
Because it can't possibly portray an entire news story in such a small
That's
tweet.
it. And I suppose news now comes so thick and fast because of how interconnected the world is that you haven't got the time to digest it before there's the next lot of breaking news.
And the sort of people that are reporting the news are not part of that generation that lived in both.
No.
They're part of the generation that have adapted or have struggled to adapt it. And a lot of them seem, by what they're saying, to struggle to have adapted.
Yeah.
Especially with things like video games, because they are something that is done for pleasure. And if you're already struggling with a new medium, you're not going to then go, I'll do it for fun.
Do you know that it doesn't actually, in their eyes anyway,
It's not necessity.
have a point to it.
They have no real frame of reference other than a biased opinion. And it is biased because they have no other frame of reference.
Yeah.
It's literally just, I have this opinion and this is the opinion I have. You're not trying to look at it from another perspective. You're not even trying to get immersed in that other perspective. Whereas with us, I feel like because we're part of that generation that has lived with and without.
We can understand it from both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, like your parenting styles, for example, you're going to try and balance it between what is expected to be the future.
Yeah.
In terms of the fact that there are children born now who are going to be doing jobs when they're graduated, like school, high school, whatever, that don't exist yet. Those jobs don't exist.
Yeah.
So you're sort of trying to, this was my childhood, let's have the same experiences, but you're still preparing. And you've got the knowledge from being that nostalgia generation to set parental controls, to sort of limit input, Netflix and whatever else.
This is the whole thing with the argument between should kids have like tablets and should kids know how to use a computer, and should they be tech savvy and stuff. And honestly, probably about 20 years ago, no. Because there wasn't a necessity for it. But nowadays, there is.
Yeah.
There's so many jobs now where you have to be tech savvy. And if you haven't learned it as a kid, it's 10 times harder to learn it when you're an adult.
It's a good sort of discussion to bring up between us two, because our parenting styles are so different as well. Like, I'm very authoritarian, and I know I am. Like,
Why am I
Eve,
not surprised?
shockingly, Eve has a tablet and she knows how to use it, but all of her apps are on lockdown. She can only go on certain apps. She can't go. Eve is not allowed to use YouTube.
Lily's is now.
Yeah.
Lily's is the same
Mine
now.
was, but she has the set games. All of the games that she has on her tablet are educational ones, like language games.
Yeah.
She's got like some French apps and stuff that she knows more French than I do. She has games on like counting and like spacey ones and stuff, but she has essentially nothing for fun. And her time on her tablet is very strict, and it's not anything to do with I don't want her to play on it and get violent tendencies. It's that actually, because of the sort of child that she is, Eve is a little dick when she's on her tablet.
We've had this conversation before, haven't we?
Eve will zone out. She won't talk to you. She won't look at you. You ask her to do anything because she has a tantrum because she just wants to sit on her tablet. So realistically, the only time Eve is really allowed to use her tablet is if we're going on a long journey.
Yeah.
So if she's on a train or if we're in a car and it's just something to sort of pacify her whilst we're travelling. But other than that, in the house when we go out, she doesn't tend to have it because she's a bit of a brat when she has it, and I don't want to encourage that behaviour.
I suppose, in the everyday life of a child, they don't necessarily need to be going out with a smartphone, with a tablet, or whatever else, because they're still a
not
child.
at this age. No, not at all.
Yeah.
But I think, there's parents that will be like, oh no, my child's not having any technology whatsoever. And honestly, I understand where they're coming from, but I also sort of disagree with it in a way.
Yeah.
Because of the time that we're in now, when technology is
You're just
such a
stunting them,
massive
aren't you?
part of everybody's lives, not just our generation, but the previous generation as well. Technology has become such a huge part of our lives, and I think it's good. Yes, limiting them, like you say. I think the way you do it is pretty much perfect because she still knows how to use it. She's still savvy with it.
And if
but
Eve's
it's limited and she doesn't
personality
have
was a bit nicer when she had it, she could probably have it a little bit more. But it's the fact that it doesn't bring out the best in her.
Yeah.
But with Lillian, she can go on her tablet and not have a meltdown when you ask her to do something. I've watched it. I've been round where she's been on a tablet and you'll go and put your shoes on and she's like, okay. And she just... That would not happen with Eve. Eve would have it, but she'd be like, this is my tablet, mummy. You always get to rub to me.
And that's
the end of the world
the
every
sort of
time.
Stereotypical. It is. That's the stereotype that everyone thinks that kids who are tech savvy are like.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case.
No, but it's not kids who are tech savvy. Eve knows how to use a tablet, but she is literally limited to using it maybe 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah,
she does not
sure.
go on it very often, and she still has that reaction.
And
And that's
it's
not
the
because
same-
she's on it all the time. It's just
Yeah.
because of who she is as an individual. That's how she is.
Yeah.
And I'm the same. When Mick's like, get off your phone and talk to me, I'm like, bitch, I'm doing something. Get on to me. And it's the same with video games. When I try and interrupt Mick when he's playing a video game, he's like, babe, try to play a game.
Yeah,
and
but
it's
is
not
that a
because the
case of
game
it's
is
a-
violent. It's because I'm interrupting
Is that
him.
because it's an online game and people still don't realise you can't pause them?
Yes, yeah, that's what it is. I'm standing there going, just pause it! And he's like, I can't. I'm
Gotta
on
wait till the
internet.
end of the round.
The internet can pause, it's fine.
Yeah.
No,
You
it's
stood
I
there with your
suppose
rollers
that's-
in.
with my rollers in.
You
Come on,
Nigel.
fag hanging out my mouth. Come on, Michael! We gotta go to the
I
shop!
can picture that. The image suits you weirdly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
the role I was born to play.
Some parents, like, they are quite sort of, almost, they're trying to avoid confrontation with their children, don't they? Is it, I want to be
yes.
their friend.
No,
you're the parent
It
first.
doesn't
Yeah.
And you know when they do sort of argue back and say, that's my tablet, you don't know what I'm doing or whatever, or you're not taking it off me, some parents do back off. And
When
sort
he
of
says
leave
it's
them to
my
their own
tablet, I'll
devices.
go, oh, okay, well, where did you pay
Yeah,
for
where's
it?
the receipt?
Yeah.
Where's the
yeah.
receipt? Oh, well, somebody bought it for me. Yeah, because you were nice.
Yeah.
And they treated you to a tablet. And when
Yeah.
you are not nice, you don't get treats.
And I
So
think-
it's coming off.
Yeah, it brings it back around to the video game thing as well, where if they are being left to their own devices, as a parent you might know what they're doing, you don't necessarily know what that is.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
you were saying, the shooter, he played whatever, he played this, he was involved
Yeah.
in that.
But if the parents didn't know what the game was.
Exactly. So there's so many times where it's such a tenuous link. So there's been murders where they've said, like, Manhunt was to blame.
Yeah.
Manhunt was the
Wasn't
cause
that
of this
banned for a
behaviour.
while?
It was. Yeah, it was banned. It was taken off sale and everything else. And it turns out that when it was properly looked into, when it's properly investigated, of the murderer and the victim was the one who owned the game, not the
Was
murderer.
that the
I mean, me
That's
personally.
Stefan Picera.
Yeah, Stefan Picera and Warren LeBlanc.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, Manhunt goes a little bit too far.
It does.
For
It's
me.
a bad example for what we're saying.
me.
But there's been car crashes where there was an unopened copy of Need for Speed Most Wanted found in the passenger footwell.
So there
Clearly
was-
he was speeding. Clearly he's been influenced by this game,
Yeah.
was driving in an unsafe manner. And when they looked at the camera footage from the intersection, actually, he was completely innocent.
Did you hear about the Dustin Lynch murder? He
name
murdered
rings
a
it, yeah.
young girl, right? And he instantly pleaded not guilty due to insanity and claimed it was because he was obsessed with GTA.
Right.
And then he retracted his plea, and his mum came forward and was like, "The video game has nothing to do with what he did.
No.
He did what he did.
Yeah.
It has nothing." The mum was like, "It's
Yeah.
got fuck all to do with GTA, guys. Come on." That's another incident where it gets mentioned once,
Yeah.
and it gets mentioned once by someone that's pleading insanity to murder, and they're like,
Yeah.
"That's why he did
Yeah.
it. That's why he did it."
That's,
I was like,
you know,
"No."
that's
They
in a
want
very
things to
small
blame.
minority of cases where the perpetrator is still around to be asked why.
Yeah.
Very small.
Yeah,
amount.
it's
Yeah,
very easy
very
for someone
small.
to say, "Oh well, before he went out and did that, he was playing Counter-Strike."
Oh, well, I'm crazy because I'm super, super into GTA. Well, I'm super fucking into Steven Universe. I'm not shooting people into space. Like, come on.
But if you
Like,
could, you would.
If I could have a little magic gem in my tummy.
Do you know the whole saying, "Get in the sea"?
Get in
I
the
could
sea.
see you quite easily standing there, it's like, "Get in the sun."
Get in the sun. Get in the sun. I could push people in front of cars if I wanted to. I could. Everyone could.
There was a retired colonel from the US Army talking about shooting games,
Yeah.
particularly those that involve a light gun. Now, there's a novelty
Yeah.
that I'm not seeing sort of outside of an arcade anyway.
Yeah.
The point was put to him: you're putting guns into these children's hands, so you are equipping them to be killers. And his response, his put down, was fucking brilliant. Madam, you have a vagina. That doesn't mean you're a prostitute.
I do like that. There was actually this guy that was talking about how video games were super, super violent and he didn't like them and they were terrible and da-da-da-da-da. And it teaches kids how to shoot. And he was like, I've been shooting since I was really young. I had my first gun when I was 6. And I was like, oh!
But there's the issue.
Okay. So
games
I can't pretend to shoot things, but I can really shoot an animal, a living thing. I can do that at the age of 6.
Oh, but it's fine to then pose with the photo of it.
Oh, God, this guy.
Little Dylan's first kill.
And also, I was a little bit like, Eve's 6.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I wouldn't fucking take her hunting. Like, if I gave her a gun, she'd shoot herself, or she'd 100% shoot me. Not a shadow of a doubt in my mind. Why would you trust an actual 6-year-old with a gun?
With how fluctuating their moods can be as well.
Yeah.
Right, so we walk home from the school run together, and literally one day she'll be biting her and slapping her and punching her, and the next day she's blowing kisses, being like, "Love you, mummy."
Kids are little fucking psychopaths.
Well,
This is what I mean, how quickly their moods can
hungry
change.
and suddenly it's a full-blown hanger attack.
I mean, same.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, yeah, but you can emote yourself better and say, I'm sorry, I'm hungry. Younger children,
I
particularly
know
where
I
they're
could, Mark, but I don't. Get off my dick about it.
using the Hello Kitty rifles.
Yes.
And this isn't Fortnite. This isn't a skin
these are
for a
real-
weapon in a game.
yeah.
real
These are real
rifles.
pink firearms with a children's cartoon character stuck onto the stock.
I mean, this goes into sort of the area of
We're
gun
getting the
control
gun
and
control,
stuff like
yeah.
that,
I mean, it's-
which
we want to
which is part of it. It's in sort of the
Yeah, because
symbol
one of the
part.
countries that has the worst video game,
America.
air quotes, related crime is also the country that has the worst gun legislation.
Weird that, isn't it?
Yeah, shocking. I was trying to find things that were UK based that were to do with video games,
Yeah.
and it's a lot harder to find UK based crimes. There are a few. Like that one that we spoke about earlier, the one that you mentioned, the
Stefan
Manhunt
Fakir,
one. Yeah,
the
the
Manhunt.
Manhunt
Yeah.
one was UK,
Yeah.
but a lot of the ones I looked at was America. Even when I broadened my search and just looked for worldwide ones,
Yeah.
the percentage of the ones for America are super high, and I'm like, that's because the access to these things, not the video
so
games,
easy.
the weapons. School shootings don't happen in the UK.
Oh, no, they did. So I've just brought it up. Dunblane, the Dunblane massacre,
Yeah.
was done with a firearm, and much like New Zealand has done within a week of the shooting happening,
Yeah.
it happened in the UK. We
Yeah.
changed our legislation. We saw
Yeah.
there is a
Yes,
problem
yes.
here.
New
Yeah.
Zealand
Let's
has done it
rectify
straight away.
it.
And that's exactly what New Zealand have done as well.
Yes,
And they
yeah.
announced it the very next day.
How many kids have to get murdered at a school for them to realise that the problem is not the video? They are so willing to legislate so many other things. They're going, it's against my freedom,
My right to bear
my
arms.
right to bear arms, to have this gun, but it's not against another person's freedom to own that video game. Is that what you're saying? Your
again-
right to own a gun, and also I don't want to get fucking started about that because it's wrong anyway. The right to bear arms is supposed to be to bear arms equivalent to your government. That's what it's there for, so that you
Yeah.
cannot be ruled by a tyrannical government. If that was the case, you would all be allowed tanks. You are not all allowed
That would
tanks.
be amazing. Parking
It would be
never be an
great.
issue.
But can you imagine Trump supporters with tanks?
Yeah.
That would not be great. The whole idea of that amendment is so that no country would ever be under a tyrannical rule. You could always bear arms against your country because the British
Which was
and the
great
American
in the 1800s.
yeah. Because it wasn't hard for you to have rifles that the government had,
Yeah.
but now we have so many different things. They've taken a bit of text and they've misconstrued it to go, I can have a gun, and that's not the same thing. It
But
means
again,
a very different
the argument
thing.
is always there, isn't it? That those who are purchasing firearms, purchasing guns, weapons, whatever, are going through stringent legal checks. Again, there's a system in place for video games. You
Yeah.
would expect that those who are accessing age-restricted material have been checked in the right way. Same as those who are purchasing a firearm. You'd expect
But
the
also,
right
it's a lot
checks.
harder. I was watching, I think it was a Louis Theroux documentary where he went to a bank and he got a bank account and he was given a free gun for just
That is
joining this
ridiculous.
bank.
Yeah,
He
wasn't
just
it?
Considering
got-
that he isn't
Yeah.
American either.
Yeah, they're just
No.
like, hey, you've got a bank account with us, have a gun. And it's like, yeah, but you'd have to, like, prove who you were and ID and stuff to get the video games and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And yes, you have to do that at a bank, but
You
you're
don't have to
getting
go
a
through
weapon that can murder
You don't have
somebody.
to go through any sort of checks to say, oh no, I've never shot anyone.
Yeah.
To get a bank account.
No. And then just go, here, have a gun. Also, you can go through checks that go, yes, I am 18, here's my ID. Okay, have this game that just simulates a bit of murder, but there's probably a plot. And also, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it, that a lot of these video games that have violent tendencies, like GTA, also have like an underlying message to that violence, which I know sounds stupid when you're talking about GTA, but GTA actually brought to a lot of people's attention
It's gang
racism,
culture. Yeah,
gang
yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
Like, how black people are mistreated is a heavy theme in
GTA San Andreas. this, the main character is a black gang member.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is actually, there's a corrupt cop. There's a huge plot point as an adversary.
And that's not to say that like gun crime and gangsters is part of black culture, but there are subtexts to that level. There's parts in the game where you see cops abusing black kids with no guns and no weapons, and you jump in and you help them. That narrative is used to bring really important issues to people's attention, and I've never ever read or watched anything to do with the media slating video games and they've ever mentioned anything like that.
No.
You have to dig for shit like that, or you have to already know it. And the generation of people that are consuming that content aren't looking for their point to be made a counterpoint later.
The media are writing for the generation that is writing it. How many young people do you know that pick up a newspaper? None. Again, everything's through online.
Yeah.
So I've had this weird thing. I think, again, it was probably to do with Call of Duty or Counter-Strike. One of the two. The Daily Mail's main website was linking it to a school shooting.
Yeah.
I think it's the Virginia Tech one, which means it was Counter-Strike.
Yes, yeah.
And, there was no direct link. And so I tweeted it to the Mail Online's gaming column, who have their own Twitter account. Come on, guys, what's happening? You guys are the experts. Why are you not the ones writing this article?
Yeah.
And they apologised. Because they are, in effect, a different company.
Yeah, but it comes back around to the people that are writing them. And there was actually, proof as well, in 2007, of publication bias. They did a research in 2007. A guy called Christopher Ferguson created an analysis, like a meta-analysis thing, and proved that a study that showed that video games were violent were more likely to be published than video games not being violent.
Yeah.
There was an actual bias.
Well,
so even the information that you're looking for in all the studies, nine times out of 10, the one that's getting actually published that you have physical access to is already had a bias.
Yeah, it's a very old adage that bad news sells.
Yeah, it does.
It's
100%.
as simple as that.
No,
people
was
like
it
reading
no-
about things that haven't happened to them so they can feel better about their life.
I had a little bit of that when the whole Momo thing came out, because I was
Yeah.
I was a bit smug about it, because I was like, well, I know Eve's never going to be affected by this because she can't even go on YouTube. This is why I don't let Eve on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was that dick that was like, this is why Eve can't go on YouTube, and this is why my son doesn't play violent video games, because I knew things like this. I was the smug dick that was going, well, I'm not affected by this, so I can feel a bit superior about it. And then I had to check myself a little bit and be like, well, I actually restrict Eve a lot on what she can do online, because I hope that it's for the best, but I might find out in 10 years time that I've restricted her too much. And that's what all parents have. I want my child to have the freedom to do what they want to do, and that's not a bad thing to want them to do that. And I was being a smug dick for being like, oh, well, Eve would never have done this because she doesn't even have access to it. But again, there's pros and cons to it.
I don't think you're wrong, because there's a very, very clear argument about not wrapping children in cotton wool and letting them have life experiences, which is fine. But the Momo point is a really good one, because there was a lot of Momo's in Peppa Pig videos. Momo's going to be in all these gaming videos on YouTube, and it's going to pop up and traumatise my child.
Yeah.
The Momo challenge wasn't a thing until the media picked it up and made it a thing and scared parents.
Yeah, people saw how much it was blowing up and made the videos.
Yeah, made it a thing. So your child might be watching Peppa Pig, but if it's on YouTube that isn't locked down correctly and it's not the official Peppa Pig channel, anything could pop up, really, because unless it's flagged to YouTube, they don't have the knowledge of what's on there.
Things that people are scared
anything
of.
that is trending sells as well. Like Momo was trending, so people were making videos about it, and the picture was everywhere.
We're part of that small YouTubers boost on Facebook, which is a really good group.
Shout out,
guys! Shout out.
Really good group.
Really, really good group. And there were so many videos that I noticed on the feed that were like, oh, I've done a breakdown of the Momo challenges, and has anybody else done a video about the Momo challenges? It wasn't just videos of Momo being put into the challenges. It was people talking about them a lot as well, and that picked up, and it kept giving it more steam and giving it more steam. And that's why I was a little bit conscious about commenting on the Christchurch killings, because I was like, I don't want to give this guy any fucking steam.
No,
he streamed it because he wanted people to talk about it. I don't want to fucking talk about it.
He wanted to go down in infamy, and the New Zealand Prime Minister the next day in Parliament had said he wants to go down in infamy. His name will not be mentioned in these walls.
I watch a really good YouTuber, which everyone's probably heard of, called Philip DeFranco. So he is a news channel. So he will bring news in a very unbiased way. He's always unbiased about it. Yeah. He'll give his opinions, but he will give all of the facts.
Yeah,
and he will say, what do you think about it? Every single time something bad happens, I'm going to call it what it is. It was a terrorist act.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
It wasn't murder. It wasn't a shooting. It was terrorism. Every time it happens, in his videos, when he covers it, he makes a point of saying, I'm not going to tell you his name. name, and I'm not going to show his picture because
That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you the heroes of the
heroes,
people who went out of their
victims,
way
those who
to-
were affected by
Exactly.
it all.
And he has never ever once shown, as far as I'm aware, because he makes a point of it now, and never once said the name of any of the perpetrators, never shown their pictures, because he makes a point of not doing it.
Yeah, because I feel like that you don't do something like that and advertise it in that way without wanting the credit.
Yeah.
Which he definitely did anyway.
I mean, he live streamed it. So
Yeah.
and that was my. I know we're coming away from video games a little bit, but it's still our sort of area because it's.
Well, it hits us
it's live
both in our
streaming.
sweet spots, doesn't it? It hits
Oh, yeah.
the video
Games
game
and
sweet
streaming.
spot and the streaming sweet
Yeah.
spot.
But it was the whole
Which,
thing
we're all over it.
with
Yeah.
people sharing it so much on social media and stuff, and the fact that people are to this day still sharing the video is giving him what he wants.
Yeah. And I
It's
think
very frustrating.
It might be slightly callous to think of it in that way. There are the reports there, obviously, about him saying, subscribe to PewDiePie at the start. And I'm thinking, obviously, the way YouTube algorithms work, the way Facebook algorithms work, anything with a hashtag, what you're doing, whilst you know there is the sort of battle between PewDiePie and T-Series going on, if you could get hashtag PewDiePie associated with your video, how wide is your audience now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the things I read today, and it's similar to earlier when I was talking about that Rape Day game,
Yeah.
how it was someone else, like not a proper company, just one person that had made it. Apparently there's been people that have made online games that are basically mimicking the Christchurch shooting. There's one
bit
that's
on the nose.
there's one that's a modification of The Sims where players will kill the worshippers inside and then go outside and dance. And stuff like that, and going back to Steam as well, because apparently there's one on Steam where it's one of those games, and the music that's playing in the game is the same music that the guy was playing in his car in the live stream, and it's
like very subtle references, but it's still a reference.
Yeah.
at the end of the
it's
day.
that thing again where it's like you decided to pull the Rape Day game. Why did you allow these ones on? And I know they've got themselves into. I don't think they really thought
You can get
it
pulled
through
for
when
everything.
they said,
That's the thing.
when
enough
they
people
said
complain
anything
about it,
when they said anything goes, I think they've made it harder for
It's a
themselves.
little bit like Reddit, though, isn't it? Anything goes
Yeah.
on Reddit,
Yeah.
basically, and that's
Yeah.
why Reddit can be considered quite a toxic place to be.
Yeah, 'cause again, self-moderating, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But like, with making a video game of an atrocity, or alluding to the same atrocity, acts of terrorism, whatever you decide to view it as or call it, it's self-perpetuating. The whole video game's a bad thing in a way. So like,
Yeah.
Columbine, Eric Klebold, Dylan Harris, shot, killed, was it 21 students, something like that?
Including teachers as well.
Including teachers and students. And the American press was quick to say they played Doom. Doom is to blame.
Well, I think they blamed Marilyn Manson for a while as
They
well.
did,
didn't
They blamed all sorts. But then, and I want to use the term very loosely, it is a direct quote, and I've noted it in my dissertation, I wish I'd said where it was from, but the whole Columbine shooting was then parodied for art in a game called Super Columbine Massacre RPG.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yes,
remember
it
that.
was. Yeah.
And bring it back to Doom. So in the second half of the game, the player, who is playing as either Eric Klebold or Dylan Harris, the Columbine shooters, gets sent to hell and fights an army of demons, which are sprites lifted directly from Doom. So Doom is to blame, and now Doom is what you're playing.
You wouldn't make a parody video game about the Twin Towers.
I'm sure they exist.
Someone
I know,
probably
Yeah.
has, but
Like, no one's blaming...
Microsoft
Yeah.
Flight Simulator is clearly to blame.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, this is
that's
the
what
whole
I
thing
mean.
about. This is the whole thing about, and sort of going into a touchy subject, but the whole race thing. Because if this was a brown person who had done this, they would just be a terrorist. There'd be no talk
Yeah.
of video games. There'd be no talk of anything. But it was a white person.
It's very, very rare that a white person doing an act of terrorism is advertised as an act of terrorism.
No.
But it's,
And luckily
it's
this
always,
time
isn't
they
it?
were.
You know,
But-
it's, oh no, he's a 44-year-old Christian father of three.
He's always a person.
who's had a mental snap, not ISIS terrorist goes on rampage.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's the brilliant, obviously Family Guy, very satirical, very with the times and on the nose. And it's got that photo, doesn't it? The police stop point, Peter in a van dressed in Arabic clothing,
Yeah.
and they've got a colour chart, 6 colours.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The
Yes.
lightest one's okay, darkest one's terrorist.
Yeah, but we have digressed.
We have
But no, but,
strayed.
but,
Yeah.
But it does play into
it does play into
Yeah,
it because
of
we're
course it
saying, whenever video games are blamed, it's usually.
I don't want to sort of put ideas out there into the ether, obviously in the hopes that if I did, it wouldn't be picked up by somebody in the media clearly making the same link here.
Yeah.
You know, a white person goes out and does a shooting.
Yes.
He's had a break. Video games are to blame. Anybody else of any different ethnic background or religion or anything like that goes out and does the same shooting, he's been radicalised.
Yeah.
No one yet has drawn a link between video games and radicalisation.
No.
And ISIS tried it by basically putting GoPros onto their rifles while shooting at American soldiers. And putting that into
but
their
it didn't
propaganda
fly.
videos.
It didn't work. No.
Didn't work.
But this is the thing, you know, when it's a white person, there has to be something else to blame. It can't just be that the person is fucked. Something else has to be blamed. There has to be a reason for them doing this.
Couldn't possibly be that a young white male is just a dickhead.
I mean,
Right.
luckily, it sounds really horrible putting the word luckily in front of anything to do with a Christchurch
Well, yeah,
shooting.
yeah,
But,
definitely.
you know, luckily with this situation, there's been less of that. Like with the Sandy
I think
Hook
the media's
shootings
getting
and stuff
called
like
out
that.
on it a lot now.
They are.
A lot of
With-
people were
with-
very quick to sort of jump onto the whole
Yeah.
right-wing approach by the media. The New Zealand Prime Minister went into Parliament the next day wearing a Muslim headscarf
Yes.
in solidarity.
Yep.
When they did the minute silence for the victims, it was prefaced by broadcasting the Muslim call to prayer to the entire country on every
Yep.
single TV channel. And there are people that are argued about it. Oh, well, you're playing into their hands. You're giving them what they want. You're covering your heads.
You're giving them what they want.
Yeah, who are they?
They've had a massive... them as a culture, as a
Yeah.
society, as a religion, have suffered a massive loss. If the way that you want to show solidarity to a community and show that you're with them and that you stand with them, if that is how you stand with them,
Yeah.
you're not playing into their hands. They're the fucking victims, you dicks.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, don't get me started. It's so fucking annoying.
I mean, in terms of a response, that the New Zealand community have shown the best possible response
100%.
Yeah.
to the
yes.
atrocity that's happened on
They've
their
said it as
doorstep.
it is. They've called it what it was.
Yeah, yeah, and approached it in the right way. They've not just given the shooter the infamy, the fame, or whatever they might have saw, or said, okay, yeah, what he was doing, he was a damaged individual. It
Yeah,
just,
who was
Well, this
mentally
is
ill.
the thing
Yeah.
as well. I was looking this up earlier, and I was trying to find articles about his background and the whole, oh, he did it because of this is what he was like. I found one.
Yeah.
One.
Because
that
everyone's
was
like, he
that.
did it because he was a terrorist.
Yeah.
You don't need
One
his
single one.
backstory.
Whereas when you look at, well, like, way back, I mean, when was the Sandy Hook one? Was it 2012 or something like
Yeah, I
that?
think so.
They're all over the place. All over the place talking about how he played video games and he was bullied and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's
All
the same with
over the
Columbine
place.
kids as well.
Yeah, but with this one, there was one article I found and that was it. All of the rest was talking about
Sandy
how
Hook
much
was
of a piece of
2012.
shit. 2012, yeah.
yeah. I think you tend to find as well that, like, there are certain newspapers with a history of approaching video games as the evil destroying our children,
Yeah.
who are very quick to make the link between an action and whatever video game might be popular at the time, if it has adult orientated content. And then as soon as that link's disproven, they don't leave the story there as an archive.
It just
you look
keeps
at it,
getting circled.
published on whatever day, edited 2-3 days later to change
No,
the
yeah,
reference
they'll
to
just-
what was the cause.
Yeah.
It's
Keep
sensationalism.
I think.
Although it does seem to be coming up less and less
Yeah.
nowadays. I
Yeah.
think people are...
Oh, you know what? I think part of the reason that it's coming up a little bit less and less is, again, and I know it sounds a very us and them argument, but the sort of people that are writing those articles now are our generation.
They are, yeah.
We're
come of age to
creeping
be able
into
to-
it now. And for me as well, like a little bit about this whole, like, yes, I do think that kids should have certain censorships when it comes to certain games
Yeah.
that they should play, which is why we have the censorship laws that we do.
Yeah.
But I trust my kid. I trust Eve when she's 18 to play Call of Duty and not go and shoot someone. I have faith in my child that something like this isn't going to make her behave like that
Yeah.
because of who she is as an individual. I think a lot of this whole, like, oh, video games are going to make people violent and stuff. I feel like it's just such a... I feel like I'm being condescended to. That's what I'm trying to say. When the media is like, oh, video games will make you violent, I'm like, you think so little about people.
Yeah.
You have so little faith in your own country and your own subjects and people that you think
they
that
can be
one tiny
influenced.
little thing is going to make them snap and they're all going to go on killing sprees because they played a game with violence.
Do you know
It's
if
like,
everybody was at that level of stress, just ready to break? Right, there are people that would get out of bed and, like, immediately stab their neighbour to death or something.
100%.
Because they've got out of bed and, oh, right, I've not ironed my work shirt and they've broken.
Exactly.
There's no milk for my cereal, I've broken. We ran out of coffee at work, I've broken. It's-
Wait, hang on a minute. That's right. I would fucking kill someone.
Like, if there was a substance that the British populace relies upon, coffee is an example. Tea, we're British. Tea.
Tea.
Everyone's at a level of stress.
If you took
And
tea away
they
from them.
take tea away from someone and suddenly they've broken, they've snapped. No one's going to say tea is a bad influence on our population. He was only drinking a cup this morning and now he's off.
Now he's off killing people.
He's gone off, he started murdering. Yeah.
Correlation and causation are two very different things.
Exactly.
And I think it's the media's going, we need to blame something.
It's been music and that didn't work out.
Music doesn't work.
It's been movies that didn't work out. Video games is the only
Mary
one that
Whitehouse
is constantly.
Video Nasties.
Yeah.
There was things about like fucking years and years and years ago. I've read genuine, ironically, articles of people complaining that newspapers were going to affect people badly, that they were going to stop them from being social, that it would destroy conversation. The same things that people say about smartphones and stuff now.
Yeah.
People were writing to complain about newspapers. They were writing articles to complain about newspapers.
And it's the same that they will write articles online.
And it's always the generation above complaining about the new thing.
Yeah.
Every time.
I mean, it's a shame because obviously we were saying that the narrative is changing. I'll come on to this in a second.
Just read what's on your screen. Number of people who drowned by falling into a pool correlates with films Nicolas Cage appeared in.
It does. It's a spurious correlation. It is that correlation causation does not equal each other.
Yeah.
So, the increase in cheese consumption has also increased, allegedly, the number of people who have died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets.
Because more people... Is it cheese nightmares that are causing it?
Possibly.
Yeah,
Divorce in the US state of Maine is going down alongside the consumption of margarine. The age of Miss America is reducing at the same rate that murders by steam, hot vapours and hot objects
to be fair,
is reducing.
that looks very dodgy.
There is a big spike in 2005.
There is-
I don't want
that
to know
is.
what happened. So jumping back to the point about the generation above always blaming something else. Our generation, as you were saying, are now being the ones who are writing the narrative about what is happening.
Yeah.
It will happen eventually that there will be something new and scary
we'll
come
start
along.
laying into the
To
generation below about
holograms
something.
or to,
Holograms are destroying our lives. I love a hologram. I never have to go to work. Fucking great. I sit in bed and just do like my work from the waist up, and no one would be able to see that I was still in bed and in my pyjamas.
Really, in conclusion, it's
We don't have the fucking answers, right?
some people are violent, some people aren't violent, and I think
Violent people will
Video
seek
games-
out violent things.
video games
Violent things
might-
will not make people violent.
No, I think violent video games could possibly, if you were that way inclined and you were very easily influenced, bring it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But you were always violent to start with. Video games are not going to make someone violent. They're either violent or they're not.
I wouldn't be someone that hates murdering and then plays a violent video game and goes, I love a murder now, let's go and do a murder. Not the same thing.
It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you hated someone to the point that you wanted to cause them harm, you're not necessarily going to think, I'm going to emulate something of,
No, you can make him in The Sims and kill him off.
You fucking psycho.
Jesus. It's not like, I hate that person. I'm not but I play Minecraft, so I'm going to pickaxe them to death.
No,
That's not a
It
nice way
doesn't-
to go,
no,
is
No,
it?
it's not. It's not.
not at all.
The bottom line of it all is, isn't it? The world is a scary place, and if you don't
Yeah.
understand something, it's easy to attribute blame to it. There is always that underlying factor as to why someone has broken, snapped, had a breakdown, whichever way you want to put it, who has gone off and committed an atrocity or a crime which mirrors... Anything can mirror. We've looked at correlation, causation, something in a video game. And the bottom line is, look out for your friends, look out for your neighbours.
Pay attention.
Pay
as well.
attention.
Pay attention to the way people are behaving and the
if-
things that they're doing and the things that they're saying.
Yeah, and if they're having a breakdown, signpost them for help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a parent, look at the technology your children are using and accessing and make an effort to understand it. Read the guides, look at parental controls, look at the age appropriateness of what you are allowing your children to play or watch or access
And
or
these
read.
things are a lot easier to understand now, because I do think that with our parents' generation, understanding parental controls on like a TV and on a computer, it was a lot harder back then.
Online gaming came about so quickly.
Yeah,
Because
100%.
when we were kids, gaming was like
It was Habit
on
Hotel.
the NES, and I mean even before
Yeah.
Well, if you want
online
to co-op,
gaming,
you've got to go to someone else's house.
we're talking about
Yeah.
PlayStation 1s and Mega
There was no
Drives and
internet
stuff like that.
connectivity.
No, there was no and
Yeah.
online gaming. It feels like it came about very quick. It was just 1 minute it wasn't a thing, and the next minute it's everywhere. If you're looking at it from like the older generation's point of view, anyway, because they're not used to things coming in that quickly
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
And it did happen really quickly.
Very quickly.
I do think that the idea
And
that
now
like
everything's online.
our generation is starting to take more control over the media narrative itself is a good sign.
It's our generation that saw the inclusion of the 12A rating.
Yes.
It's not quite 12, it's not quite 15, so if you want to watch it with a parent.
Yeah, but the age ratings fluctuating and being constantly assessed is a good thing in my opinion. I know people moan about it because, well, it was this and now it's been increased. Well, it's been increased for a reason. They're not increasing it for shits and giggles. It costs more money for them to increase it, so they're not going to do it unless they absolutely have to. I think the idea that our generation is moving forward a little bit more and taking back this narrative and that things aren't getting blamed on the video games so much anymore is a good thing. I just worry about what the next scapegoat is going to be. Yeah. Because there's always going to be something, isn't there?
YouTube.
And
It's as simple as
well,
that.
that's kind of what it's been with this one, isn't it?
Yeah,
With the
YouTube's been in the
Christchurch.
firing line as well. Not quite as often or as much as video games,
Yeah.
but it has. A couple
But
of
the
times.
the Christchurch one is...
Oh, it's a turning point because
fuck.
it is bridging that gap between videos is to blame and self-moderated content is to blame. That will be the change in narrative.
Yeah.
But, do you know that long bit of text that everyone always scrolls through without reading
Yeah.
before they click I accept?
Yeah.
It's an end-user license agreement.
Yeah.
And as soon as you tick that, the company is absolved of all blame.
Yeah.
The people who sold that video game to you are absolved of blame. You are responsible for your own actions in the use of the product.
I kind of feel like having to do that is a bit of a fucking joke, isn't
Just
it?
to cover their own
Like,
back.
I know, but the idea that someone can have that and be like, I did it because of this game. No, you did it because you chose to do it.
Yeah.
And you were influenced by this game per your own decision to play it. Nobody made you do it. And the fact that a company has to go, if you murder someone because of this, it's not our fault, is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
People have been doing shitty things from day one, and the video game thing has been a scapegoat. Modern media is a scapegoat. Oh, there's too much violence in modern media. And then it's books, and then it's magazines, and then it's... I don't know, fucking just anything from day one. Everything has always had something to, and it can never just be man is flawed.
People are
It is never that humanity as a race are a bunch of dicks.
Yeah.
And that, we are predisposed to being dicks.
Yeah. And it is this, I think where the media is concerned as well, it is that the loudest voice is the one that's heard.
Yeah.
And the voice of outrage is louder than a voice of
Much
enjoyment.
louder.
So, but if you actually engage, and I think that's the biggest problem with the sort of articles that we've been seeing and the negative comments that these people aren't engaging with the content.
And that's why actually the engagement thing as well. How often are the shooters described as the isolated loner or the bullied loner, the picked on misfit?
Yeah.
We all get bullied.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Go
We all
out,
have.
interact, be bros, be human, be better.
Yeah, just don't be dicks, man. God, I shouldn't have to tell you guys. Especially not you guys listening. You best not be being dicks.
Just go forth, spread the message,
Yeah,
don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Don't forget to be nice to people. Compliment people. People that look sad. Don't be like, oh, you look sad today. What's up with you? If someone's standing around looking sad and you think, oh, they look a bit shit today, don't be like, oh, you look like shit. Are you all right? Go,
Yeah.
oh, I like your hair today. How you doing? And then they'll go, oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm all right. And they might be all right now because you've just complimented them. You can engage with somebody without fucking delving into their childhood trauma. You can just be nice to a person and it makes all the difference. And there's a part of me that thinks that maybe some of these shitty things might not have happened if more people had just engaged on a nicer level with the assholes that did the bad thing, and they are assholes, and they wouldn't have just been cured by a kind word, but it might have made people think twice, especially when it comes to like school shootings and stuff like that.
9 times out of 10 they come from bullying.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
That's not the cause. I don't want to say cause. You decided to do this. You are the cause.
Yes.
You are the
Yeah.
reason this happened. You alone.
But
There are factors that add to it. And with school shootings, I can't think of a single school shooting that didn't have, wasn't anything
the
to do
loner
with
that had
with-
been bullied.
They had
and-
been bullied,
Yeah. Just
or
don't be
felt
dicks
like
to
they'd
each
been
other.
mistreated by the school themselves or something like that.
Yeah, but yeah, I reckon that's about covered everything for us, to be honest.
Yeah.
It is,
We've
yeah.
gone all over the shop, guys.
And yet we still managed to bring it back on
Yeah, we
topic.
did.
Yeah.
So this is officially the second podcast we've done. If you've got any suggestions for us to do more things you want to hear us talk about, different groups of us that you want to hear us talk
We've
about,
got a couple of ideas lined up.
we've got the Discord, we'll link in the bottom. If you want to pop some suggestions in, we've got a suggestion bit, haven't we?
Yes, we do.
So hit us up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions,
Or I
put it in the
suppose if they
comments.
want to make any points about what we've said.
Yeah,
if
definitely.
they can expand on anything
Good,
we've said.
or in the comments.
Yeah.
Feel free to post in the
if
comments.
you've got
Yeah.
anything that you want to add to the discussion, we want to see what you guys think as well. Like if you've got experiences that you've gone through yourself, or like people always, I know somebody that did this, that did this and did
always.
that. Like these sort of things are incredibly interesting, and they're an insight into why people behave the way they behave, and it's fascinating.
And also, if you think we were wrong on anything, tell us.
yeah, call us out on our shit.
Have a conversation in the comments.
Have a
Talk to
conversation
us
on Discord. So, to summarise, I guess then, don't be a dick, look after yourselves, be a bro.
Yeah, don't be a dick, look after yourselves, look after each other.
Yeah.
It's not that hard,
Perfect.
guys. It is hard. It's really fucking hard. But yeah, thanks for listening. It was fun. It was a nice little debate. I think Mark's wanted to do this for a what? You wrote your dissertation
This is the reason
in
the channel exists.
you wrote your dissertation in, was it 2010?
Hang on. So, right, the dissertation was in May 2010.
Yeah.
That was when the dissertation was published. There was 350 hours of practical research
9
before
years.
that, let alone my own sort of, I hate what's in the newspaper, write to the newspaper.
Yeah.
I hate what people are saying about what I do something about
Yeah,
it.
and that's why the channel exists. This whole channel exists. The whole concept of this channel exists because Mark has this opinion, literally.
You're all welcome. I will take my cut of the Patreon money now.
There are no cuts. It all goes back into the channel. We have nothing.
Nobody gets a
We
cut.
have so little and they have so much. Yeah, donate. Oh, bye.
Yeah, link to Patreon below.
Right, well, thanks for listening. Goodbye forever.